Imperial reality is hard to call a paragon of humanity and universal prosperity. Living under the rule of the beloved emperor means constant sacrifices and trials for the glory of mankind. Whether you are a Lord Inquisitor, a rogue trader, or a mere laborer, everyone must give their all, as the Imperium wages an unending war against the entire galaxy. And war is a very costly amusement. The resilience of even the most legendary warriors is always based on a strong and reliable rear. To supply millions of soldiers with everything necessary, billions of people must toil in the countless agri-world fields and manufactorum plants of Forge Worlds, using and maintaining endless tools, machines, and other means of production under the vigilant guidance of those who understand best how vital mechanisms are to the Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus, a technocratic organization, also known as the Priesthood of Mars, holds a monopoly on technological knowledge within the Imperium. Their Forge Worlds produce the most potent and advanced weaponry of the Imperium. The adepts of this organization, the Tech Priests, are vital in maintaining most of the Imperium's most advanced technologies, not least of which is the life-sustaining Golden Throne of the Emperor. Life under the rule of the Omnissiah greatly depends on whether you are a full-fledged member of the Cult Mechanicus or not. The life of an ordinary laborer on a Forge World is little different from that of a similar worker from a hive manufactorum, except that the Tech Priests are much stricter in enforcing all rituals of using any given tool. Otherwise, a person faces the same long work shifts, prayers, punishments, and a complete bleakness of existence without any hope for a better life. Overall, although the Mechanicum's approach to human life is more pragmatic than that of the ecclesiarchy representatives, or even some factory owner producing aluminum spoons on Mariol, this pragmatism can equally turn out to be a boon or a nightmare for the worker. Where a simple production owner tries to maximize profit, Tech Priests only care about the productivity of the process itself. If they decide that increasing a worker's ration, installing expensive augmentation, or otherwise improving his living conditions is necessary to maintain or increase production rates, it will be done immediately. On the other hand, they might decide that your job can be perfectly performed by a servitor. Contempt for the weakness of the flesh is absolute in the Cult Mechanicus. They are unconcerned with fatigue, injuries, and diseases. All they are interested in is your efficiency as a working unit. And to maintain this efficiency at an acceptable level, they will take everything from a person, including his body. Why spend on medical care and lose hours to care for the sick, when it's easier to convert an injured factory worker into a servitor? Why should a person spend time on entertainment when 6 hours a day for food and sleep are enough to maintain working capacity? And if you think about it, sleep takes up too much time. Augmetics will solve this problem, even at the cost of reducing lifespan and suppressing cognitive functions of the brain. It's worth it. After all, what difference does it make if such a worker dies in 2 years? A replacement will have already grown by then, and extraneous thoughts distract from work. This approach often leads others to consider absurd. From the direct logic of Tech Priests, production must never stop, even if your Forge World is invaded by war, and your manufactorum is already being stormed by orcs. If you think that hostilities on factory grounds are a reason for evacuation or at least a day off, then you are a poor Tech Priest. Production must continue, even if gunfire can already be heard from the adjacent workshop. You should remain calm and continue working. Do not worry. The manufactorum's security systems are already dealing with the problem. Remember, unauthorized leaving of a workstation is punished by physical impact of the 3rd degree and a fine of 5 food units. In general, the life of the proletariat in the Imperium is hardly joyful, and life under the rule of the Omnissiah is no exception. It's hard to say where a worker has it harder, under the rule of another efficient owner or such an efficient fabricator. However, despite their detachment from the rest of humanity, Tech Priests are still part of it. Each of them was once the same person as everyone else before being initiated into the mysteries of the Omnissiah. And although his life does not drastically differ from the life of an ordinary worker, it is filled with no less horror and often with no less significant decisions. Followers of the Omnissiah can be accused of many sins, but not hypocrisy. Just as they treat ordinary people, they treat themselves. Flesh is weak, and they willingly reject this weakness. All that matters to them is their own efficiency in the tasks they perform. And all that they have taken from ordinary workers, they will gladly take from themselves, with the only difference being that their process is voluntary. The main doctrine of the cult Mechanicus is the service to mechanisms on the path to unity with them. Yes, mechanisms must perform their work, for in this lies the joy of their existence. And man must serve the machine, helping it fulfill its purpose, and be grateful for the opportunity to use the fruits of its labor. This foundation extends through the entire hierarchy of the cult Mechanicus and remains unchanged whether in regard to the techno-priest or the general fabricator from Mars. The difference is only in the tasks. However, the life of a representative of the cult of the Omnissiah greatly depends on his place in the hierarchy and the tasks he performs. However, a high position and title for a tech priest does not mean a carefree life of luxury. Within the cult Mechanicus, as in many other imperial structures, the law operates. The higher the position, the bigger the headache and the more serious the consequences. Yes, you give orders to others, but this is not a privilege, it's a direct duty. Yes, perhaps you no longer spend time taking care of your augmetics, leaving this task to servants. But this is not a whim, it is a necessity, because you simply no longer have time to deal with such things. A poor soldier is one who does not dream of becoming a general. However, where the soldier has a clear routine, meals, sleep, and his needs are already taken care of by the command, the general goes mad, managing thousands of human lives. And to the cult Mechanicus, this analogy is more than applicable, but your specialty might just be the factor that makes your life at the moment easier than for the rest. Servants of the Omnissiah are very practical and rational, and you can be sure you will never be forced to do something that is not your job. You may be attached to a regiment of the Imperial Guard and be responsible for maintaining machinery. Tech priestesses almost never go into battle. For that, there are guardsmen. You might find yourself part of a biologist team, essentially becoming a scientist and dealing with matters not at all related to warfare. After all, breeding new varieties of agri-crops is also important work. You may be involved in design, construction, mining, servicing systems on a spacecraft, synthesizing specific chemicals for fertilizing fields, or synthesizing other specific chemicals. Priests of the Omnissiah have many areas of work where they will never hear a single shot fired in their lives. And even if you are directly involved in combat work, whether it is maintaining combat servitors on the front lines or fully executing combat operations as a Skitari, rest assured the machine god will provide everything necessary for your task, and you are unlikely to complain about it. After all, fear is the first thing that the tech priestesses of Mars deprive their warriors of. And if you are lucky enough to become a pilot of the incarnation of the Omnissiah on the battlefield, if you are trusted to control a mighty titan, then your life will be akin to that of an aristocrat. However, do not forget about the maniacal rationality of the tech priestesses. The only prohibitions in their work are the dogmas of their cult, which are not tied to ethics or morality. In general, to not be accused of techno-heresy, you essentially just need to avoid touching Xeno's technologies and not flirt with the warp. Otherwise, you are not just allowed, you are obliged to do anything to achieve your goals. For example, if a Magos biologist simply needs to capture several live Tyranid hormagaunts, he will just inform the command of the nearest Imperial Guard regiment fighting the Tyranids, without giving a second thought to how dangerous such an operation might be. And moreover, he might well take part in it personally. Of course, among the servants of the Omnissiah, there are legendary personalities whose significance and influence have long stood outside any bounds and dogmas. However, their lives are not just no easier than the others. They are filled with horror and responsibility to such an extent that an ordinary person would go mad just trying to comprehend all of it. After all, try asking Belisarius Cawl what he thinks about his life. It's unlikely that the creator of the Primaris Space Marines would even dignify such a foolish question with an answer. In general, serving the cult Mechanicus is the embodiment of self-sacrifice. Foolish is the one who touches the mysteries of the machine god in search of worldly goods. Tech priests are not interested in carnal pleasures. They consider them a vice and a weakness, as is the flesh itself. They do not need money. their wealth is in knowledge. They do not seek power, for even the general fabricator is but a servant of the Omnissiah. They do not covet idleness, for their work is in the meanings of existence, and for this they will give everything, including their bodies and minds. Augmetics for tech priests are not just a functional improvement. It is a religious act of sacrificing oneself for the good of the Omnissiah. Every replaced organ, every new limb, every tool implanted in place of human flesh is an act of union with the machine, an act of supreme service to it. Members of the Mechanicum cult do not belong to themselves. Where an ordinary person would be horrified at the sight of electro-indoctrinations forcing people to feel a certain emotion and call it a fascist tool of control, a tech priest would only see the word tool and genuinely not understand the essence of the accusations. For all this is done for the sake of productivity, and his own body is likely already enhanced with far more terrifying implants. The life of a tech priest cannot be called easy, but they do not aspire to such. Life Mechanicum is service elevated to the absolute, and in self-sacrifice they can only be compared to the Astartes and the Inquisition.